Tomer, I've got a question for both you and Michael again from Brian. Good evening, Brian. Hope you're well.
Good evening. Good evening, everybody. It's a question to both Tomer and Eddie. Based on the very greedy angels you've got there that take such a big share, what's the oldest you will bottle at? I know you're not doing age statements as such, but how long would you leave the spirit in the barrel?
So the classic and the elements, the releases that we already released, they are about 4 years. Technically, there are 3, but it's more close to 4 years. But I think the highest that we can go in the future with maturation will be 5 to 7 years, but we are not there yet. We have to wait so I can check it.
Thank you.
Michael?
Yeah, I think there is a network problem here.
I can hear you, Michael. So.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Because I can see the video is stuck. Because I could not hear the question.
I'll give it again, Michael. You hear me now?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Bearing in mind what greedy angels you've got there that take such a big share, what would be the oldest barrels you would use to bottle? How long would you leave them in cask as a maximum?
Okay, as I said,
Okay, we're losing Michael.
I think there is some technical glitch.
we don't have from 4-year-old.
Some technical.
Can you hear me?
There. Can you hear us, Michael? I can see you now.
I can hear you.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't have age statement on the bottle. We have close to 10 different expressions. Our youngest whiskey is 4 years old. That is non-chill filter Nirvana. And also we have something called Zodiac series, which is close to 9 years old. So we have different types of whiskey having different age in different expressions.
Thank you.
And I think one thing I would want to add is probably people who are more familiar with the UK or the Scottish maturation. Usually it's around 2.5% in Scotland, roughly, evaporation losses or angel share. And what we experience at lakes is around 4.5 to 5%. So we compared to Scotland, we do experience a little bit more evaporation losses. But for me, it's good. I mean, you know, the better the losses, the better the temperature, and I can get better extractives and maturation. But it's interesting. So, Michael, what do you roughly get evaporation losses average?
It's a, you know, when you, in terms of volume, we lose close to 8%.
8%.
But actual volume of alcohol loss is much lower because when you talk about evaporation, it's a mix of water and alcohol. So, you know, we fill the cask at 53 ABV. And by after 5 years, the alcohol drops down to say around 57%. Are you with me?
Yes, Michael, are you considering doing some expressions with the age statement, and what's the reason for not using age statement?
Because for me, age is not a criteria. You know, what you need is right balance of the flavors in the whiskey. You know, I've got close to 20,000 casks. You know, all the 20,000 casks are different. You know, normally, you know, as whiskey evolves, you know, it reaches its peak. It can be after 3 years, it can be after 5 years, even after 7 years. So for me, once the whiskey reaches its peak, I need to use it. So what I do is, if it is young, if it is 3-year-old, I use it for Nirvana, that is non-chill filter, chill filtered whiskey. If it is 5, then I use for flagships. If it is much older, I use for the special releases.
That's interesting because we are not using age statement in our core range, and maybe that's because of the climate. We thought because of the quick maturation, age not matters. So just wanted to...
because the amount of extraction I get here in India is 4 times higher. You know, we say 1 year in India is equivalent to 4 years in Scotland or England. So my extraction level is quite high because we have 3 seasons here. That is hot, hotter, and hottest. So every time we extract a lot of flavor compounds from the cask.
Thank you. Dhavall, do you put age statement on the bottles?
No, we don't. And you know, very similar concept to you guys. You know, I also believe in maturation peak, and when the cask is right, it's time to bottle. But when you do a planning, when I'm talking about the stock and the future and the strategy, there is a lay down for much more age statement in the future. So age statement will come. Now, when I say about that, a lot of people assume that it's going to be a 10-year-old or 12-year-old. But when I say age statement, there would be certain whiskeys and certain nuances or characters. So for example, there are certain sherry casks that I use with Spanish oak, PX, and a different seasoning profile. They kind of peak around at 8, 9, 10 years of age. So things like that. So what I would do is, rather than having a standard 10-year-old or 12-year-old age statement, it would be more based on the character or the flavor of the cask that we are using and what would be the right peak of maturation. Very similar to what Michael said and that. So when we are planning, yes, we call it age statement just to make it easier, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be a 10-year-old. It might be a different age for different standard profiles. But I think you guys would agree. I think no age statement, I think it has got a bad reputation, a reputation in the world, just because I think some of the, whiskey companies started pushing out very, very young single malt. And when you talk about a no age statement whiskey, I'm just talking from a UK perspective. I know maturation is different in Asia, but when you talk just about UK, a lot of people assume that it's a no age statement. It's a 3-year-old bottled out. But I think the times have changed, and you guys do that as well. That based on the right cask, the right maturation, right cut points, right fermentation, you can have a very, very good whiskey at much sooner than what you could have previously. And also, it matters more on how do you pick those casks. And when you pick at that, so like when I start creating a whiskey maker's reserve, it might be a very small vatting of maybe 20 casks, but I start with 500, and then I narrow down and pick exactly the right casks that complement each other, which is probably very similar to what you guys are doing.
Yes, I think wood management is really important, especially, maybe not, but especially in hot climate whiskey maturation. And we are picking just every cask, and because if you pick wrong cask, it will be shown really quick, and or you won't be able to use this cask, or you will have to separate it in blending. But I think what you see in cold climate countries, we see much quicker, and sometimes good, sometimes bad.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love sherry cask, and that's what I spend my time dreaming about. And the sherry cask I would prefer, if Lakes was based in India or something like that, the sherry cask I would use would be completely different than the sherry cask I use in England or UK in that example. But any questions, Kirsty, do we have, or shall we go?
Yeah, we have. I was just thinking we might move on to Michael and the Paul John Select Cask Whiskey for everyone to start trying, because I'm very selfishly going to jump in with a question for Michael that might help us from what I picked up you said earlier about the whiskey that we're trying this evening. So am I right in thinking you said that whiskey specifically was matured in the underground climate controlled warehouse? So my question is, do you choose different casks for that warehouse specifically versus your above ground warehouse? So if it's climate controlled, following on from Dhavall's point, do you use sherry casks in the underground warehouse, or would you use more of European oak, for example, versus American oak in a much hotter climate above ground?
So I will answer in my perspective because I think we lost.
I think we've lost Michael as well.
Yeah,
Hopefully he'll jump back in.
As I said, we have few or several warehouses spread around Israel with different climates. And what we saw at the beginning, we sent all types of casks that we have, all types of wood that we have to each warehouse. And what we saw is that each different cask developed different in each location. So what we are now doing is sending what we thought the best cask for each location, what we could use in the future for blends that we are planning or for some whiskeys. But different woods develop differently in each warehouse.
Yeah.
And do you use the woods that you think would best fit that warehouse, or to a large extent are you still playing being such a new distillery and trying to explore and find out what kind of flavors you can get from that wood in that warehouse environment?
It depends on what we thought when we are drinking it. But don't forget that when we are sampling each cask, it's a single cask whiskey or spirit. And what I have to think about is how it will be inside the blends in the future, because most of the whiskeys that we are about to release will be a vatting of different types of casks. So I need to think about how it will be blended with other types of casks. Will it be good or not? As I taste it now, it's good. So, as a single cask, it will be great. But it's not necessarily that it will be good in a blend.
Okay. Michael, have we got you back there, Michael?
Yeah.
Hi.
Okay, for the select cask, I don't vat more than 100 casks in a year. In a way, it is a limited edition. And I choose whiskies that are in between 7 to 8 years old. Are you with me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Okay, the whiskies are 7 to 8 years old from the underground cellar. Because, the classic is something which is very easy drinkable. This is from the ex-bourbon cask. Ex-bourbon cask, it imparts certain elegant flavors. It is high on honey, it's a lot of vanilla, you have orange zest, you have tropical fruity notes such as peach and pineapple and bananas, green apples, and you have, wonderful note of coconut. In a way, it is very, very elegant. This elegancy I can get only from the underground cellar. From the other two warehouses, I get more robust character ones. It becomes more chocolatey and more woodier and more vanillin in character. If I choose whiskeys from the other two warehouses, it will not be the same classic anymore.
Michael, are you there? I think we lost him. No, he's there.
Yeah. So there is some technical problem actually, Dhavall.
Yeah. No, that's fine. What I'll do is, yeah, if you want to reboot or something like that, what
yeah,
I can do is,
I will do that.
I can answer from from a Lakes perspective as well. So for those of you who don't know Lakes very well, Lakes, we have 4 different warehouses as well, spread across the Lake District area. Some closer to the water, some away from the water. And I try to mature different casks based on where I am what I'm trying to create. So if there are certain nuances or certain flavors, or if I'm trying to get more extractives out of certain casks, they will be in a very, very specific warehouse in a very specific location. In fact, I have 2 of my colleagues right now on the call as well, Grace and Vaibhav. I mean, we work very, very closely. So if there are certain nuances that I want to enhance, contrast, or deepen certain characters out of wood, I might ask that cask to be put on our zone 3, which is a top or a bottom or middle. And what you would be surprised to know, that even if if you have a warehouse, and if the warehouse is sitting on a hill which doesn't have any other buildings next to each other, the whiskey that's going to come out when the air is free flowing will be very, very different to the whiskey that comes out from a warehouse which is adjacent to each other. If you take just one warehouse, if a cask is in the northwest direction in a corner, the whiskey that comes out will be very, very different than the one that's sitting in the center. And as a whiskey maker or a blender, what you have to do is be very, very mindful of those differences, and then try to use those particular cask and flavor combinations when you're trying to create your profile. And in fact, when I was in Macallan, we always, there's a Macallan distillery, there's a warehouse called the Bodega style warehouse, which are kind of, similar style to the Bodega warehouses you find in Jerez, Spain. And the style and the character we used to get out of those casks, every time we used to nose a whiskey, if it's a drier character and much more drier style, we know exactly that cask came from the Bodega style warehouse, even before even looking at it. And it is that prominent. So I think the warehouse, the location, the style, they all make a big difference. And going back to Kirsty's question before, as far as I can say, everybody has their own philosophy and ways of making, and there's no right or wrong answer here. But as far as we are concerned, Lakes is concerned, myself is concerned as a whiskey maker, for me, I don't necessarily try to force a style onto a whiskey, but at the same time, I don't take the nature for what it's going to give me. I'll try to nudge it in the right direction that I want and enhance. And we have just started putting a lot of, measuring. We measure temperature, humidity constantly every minute at all these different warehouses. We just started doing that. And that is helping me manage the blend profile of the cask that I'm laying down for future. So I'm sure you guys are doing the same way as well.
Yes, Dhavall, this is fascinating what you are talking about, the warehouse and differentiation between casks inside the same warehouse. We have experienced also differentiation in casks inside the same warehouse. It depends on where the casks sit inside the warehouse, and if the sun touches the cask, or if it's in a higher or lower level of the warehouse. Dhavall, how many levels of cask do you have inside the warehouse, and what's the differences of temperatures between the lowest and the highest?
That's a good question, and probably I would give you a wrong answer if I'm just guessing. But okay, from a length perspective, the height perspective, I don't like to go higher than 8 to 9 casks. So all the Lakes warehouses are designed below 9. Now you'd ask me why. It's just because of my previous experience. I know when the higher you go, the temperature differential between the top cask and the bottom cask is very, 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 very different. So what I try to do is keep it at the maximum 7 to 9, so that I know I can manage those variations or the differential in the extractives that I get. One of the other good thing, and I'll answer your question the other way as well. The second one is different warehouses. We have one with much more Dunnes style flooring, which is open earth. So you can maintain the humidity and the temperature throughout. And we have warehouses where we have completely concrete floors. So it acts as a heat sink, which keeps it much more cooler all year round. I have also tried to modify the different roof lines. So if you have a roof which has a translucent roof, which allows the sun to go in, the cask that touch the sun precisely, I mean, they have much more different character. We have also seen that the cask on the southwest facing walls are much more different than the northern side. And, those are the fascinating. Now, temperature differential can be between 3 to 6 degrees, depend.
From level to level or from bottom to top?
Yeah, level from bottom and top can be different from 3 to 6 degrees, but we are trying, like I said, we just put some temperature, measuring things, and which will get much more.
That's really interesting, because we do not put more than 4 levels inside the warehouse, because thinking about the first level is already really hot. And so if we go above 4 levels, it can reach more than 50 degrees almost all of the year.
Yeah, so, and that's why, one of the things we had at different work at Macallan as well, we had warehouses where you would put on stores 4, and that there would be a complete floor, and then you would put 4 more. So if I had to design a warehouse, it would be much more shorter, from a height perspective, and just go 4 to 5 and give different things. And some of the things that I work on from my research perspective is I mostly use anything I want more color or more extractive that goes on my zone 3, which is much more at the roof line level. And if I'm using French oak pretty much, and French oak I use, it's a dangerous cask. If you don't know what you're doing, it's like playing with fire. And if you don't know how to manage French oak, it can go so bitter and so much tannic. So what we do is manage French oak on a very, very low level, closer to the concrete flooring heat sink. So it gives you a very, very slow hit of tannins all year round, rather than giving a much more impact heat. And one of a very important concept is called a fiber saturation point. I don't know if you and Michael have come across that. Fiber saturation point is around 30% humidity or moisture content of the wood. So when you hit that point, the expansion and contraction of the stave happens very much at that moisture control. So what I try to do is I always try to keep whiskeys above that control line that allows me to give me different specific flavor, character, and nuances. But in my head, I have different styles. So we have, French oak, American, Romanian, Hungarian, and every oak for me has a different place where I'm going to put them in the warehouse to give me that different character.
Well, we have more than 30 degrees humidity, 30% humidity all of the year. So we don't have this problem, but we also have really big differences between day and night all of the year. So that causes a really good expansion of the wood. And that's one of the reasons for the taste that you get from hot climate Andres maturation.
Yeah, I would love that, and I wish I could swap the location of the Lakes Distillery to Israel, because I would love that. The difference in temperature, that expansion and contraction is so important to create such good dynamic characters and complexities in the whiskey cask, which unfortunately, we don't have that big variations. But that's why you have to start playing tunes with different European oaks to create all those complex flavor profiles.
And it also gives you much more opportunities for blending, or what to work with.
But I would like to comment here. Dhavall, you have seen the warehouses here.
Yeah. And I love your underground warehouse.
So the warehouse is 15 meters in height, and I have 13 tiers. So for me it works because today I have we are relatively new distillery because it's just 10-year-old. Most of the whiskeys are drawn from the first and second fills as of now. Okay, going forward I will have older casks coming in. So at this point of time I need whiskeys that are kept on top, because from the topmost tier, I get more woodier character. You know, it is very important that you have different types of whiskey so that, you know, you have something to blend. As you know, older the cask it gets, you get lesser extraction. Once I hit the third and fourth fill, I can utilize the casks that are on top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you have uniform profile, you know, in the future you will have problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.